Welcome to Old School Movies podcast, where I, Nora, your host, will share my reviews on some old but gold box office hits in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Rest assured I will try not to spoil much of their golden details so that you can sit back and enjoy them later. For our second episode, let's dive into my top 2 movies that retell true stories of the Holocaust in World War II. For this special episode, I decided to split it into 2 different parts. Each will present one classic movie illustrating the setting of this critical event in human history. Hopefully, this new format will make it easier for you to absorb quite a plethora of information. Today, I'll handle the first part, and the second part should be coming soon. So please stay tuned and follow my blog page for more updates. Okay, now shall we start? When I was a school student, history class was never my favorite. The lessons often gave me chunks of information, from the conflicts in ancient kingdoms to the national rebuilding after wars. And I had to squeeze all those details into my brain to deal with the final examination, which was truly a great stress for me at times. Plus, the storytelling in the textbook was quite repetitive, boring for me, so my experience learning history was like a forceful relationship which had no mutual affection. That's why I didn't value this subject much back then. However, the fate between me and history returned during my second year of university. In this time, it brought me to a different aspect that I didn't really expect to encounter. While I was doing some desktop search to support my group project, I came across a blog post that detailedly highlighted events throughout the development of human beings. What shocked me the most was the Holocaust in World War II, which I was briefly introduced to, but never got a chance to look into during my school time. Ever since, I've been curious about how life truly was back then during World War II. Given the intensity and brutality of this war, and yes, under the tremendous violence of the Holocaust, how many people were there who managed to survive through this agony? Were there any stories beyond the context of fighting, captivating, and even running away? So, the movies I'm telling you today don't fully showcase the painful views of World War II or Great Jewish Massacre, but they are mainly on the bright side in such a dark era of human history, where humanity's kindness and resilience still vividly shine through. World War II spanned from 1939 to 1945 and involved 2 major alliances, the Allies and the Axis. Nearly every nation, including all the major powers, took part, dedicating their entire economic, industrial, and scientific capacities to the war effort. As the deadliest conflict in history, the war claimed between 70 and 85 million lives. And what worth noting in this war is the genocide of European Jews, or what we often call the Holocaust. From 1941 to 1945, 6 million, or 2/3 European Jews, were systematically murdered by the Nazi Germany and its collaborators. This execution was mainly conducted through mass shootings or poison gas in the extermination camps. The most well-known camps were Auschwitz, Treblinka, Belzec, Sobibor, and Szemno. They were all based in Poland, the country which was densely populated by the Jews back then. With the growing complications in Poland's extermination camp systems, this country is a no-return zone for most Holocaust victims. Only 380,000 Polish Jews survived among 3.3 million Jews lived there, accounting for the largest number of fatalities in the Jewish community. So successfully surviving through this genocide for the stretch of 6 years was very unlikely. But such a miracle did happen, and it even became a great memoir 1 year after the end of World War II, which was also brought to the widescreen 55 years later. I'm talking about The Pianist, a biographical film released in 2002, produced and directed by Roman Polanski. The plot was largely adopted from the memoir of the same name by Władysław Szpilman, an exceptional Polish pianist who survived the Warsaw Ghetto during the Holocaust when Nazi Germany sieged his home country. Szpilman, starred by Adrian Brody, is a talented classical pianist born into a prosperous Jewish family in Poland. He resides with his family of 6 in a spacious apartment in Warsaw. Although being aware of the growing threat posed by Germany and Hitler's ambition in Poland, the Szpilman family believes that the Nazis are just a temporary danger and that England and France will come to Poland's aid if a serious conflict arises. Władysław's illusions are shattered when a German bomb hits the radio station during one of his live broadcasts. In the early phase of the Nazis' occupation, Szpilman, being a respected musician, remained optimistic, securing employment papers for his father and taking a job playing piano at a restaurant. However, as the German control intensifies, the artist and his family are eventually targeted for deportation to a concentration camp. Refusing to accept such a grim fate, Władysław hides in a well-furnished apartment offered by a friend. But when his protector disappears, he is left to survive on his own, spending the next few years moving from one abandoned shelter to another, evading capture by the German forces. The Pianist left a profound impact on me, as it brought the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust into gut-wrenching clarity. Watching Szpilman's story unfold, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of despair and disbelief at the sheer scale of the persecution that Jews faced in the Nazi-occupied Poland. The systematic genocide wasn't just a historical fact anymore. It became real, personal. Through Szpilman's eyes, I felt the terror of the Warsaw Ghetto, the suffocating fear of being hunted, and the agony of watching everything familiar, everything loved, being torn away by the Nazi cold, calculated brutality. The film's portrayal of life in the Warsaw Ghetto struck me to my core. The conditions were so inhumane. People crammed into tiny spaces, slowly starving, while violence raged all around them. It was as though their very humanity was being stripped away piece by piece. The threat of death was constant, and I could almost feel the weight of it myself as I watched Szpilman's family struggle to hold on to some semblance of normalcy in such a dehumanizing environment. There was no escape from the cruelty, and yet somehow they persevered, holding on to a fragile hope that things might change. But what moved me the most was Szpilman's indomitable will to survive. Even in the face of such overwhelming loss and isolation, his spirit refused to break. I found myself on edge, silently rooting for him, feeling every close call as if I were right there with him. I think the film was a reminder of the strength we carry within us, even when we're pushed beyond what seems humanly possible. His survival wasn't just a matter of luck. It was a testament to the human spirit refusing to surrender, no matter the odds. And yet, Szpilman's survival also depended on the kindness of others, people who risked their own lives to shelter him. In a world consumed by cruelty and indifference, the compassion of those few individuals who chose to help moved me deeply. It's hard not to reflect on how easily they could have looked away. How many did? But those who didn't, those who saved Szpilman's and countless others, showed me that even in the darkest moments, there's still light, there's still hope. The Pianist isn't just a story of survival. It's a reminder of the strength of the human spirit, the courage of those who defy hate, and the painful history that we must never forget. It left me humbled, heartbroken, but also inspired by the resilience of those who endured. After hearing Szpilman's harrowing journey of survival, I wonder, how do we as individuals process the sheer scale of the atrocities committed during the Holocaust? Can we truly grasp what it meant to live in constant fear, where every day might be your last? What would we have done in Szpilman's place? Could we have found the strength to endure? And for those who risked everything to help, would we have had the courage to show such kindness in a world so dominated by cruelty and indifference? Finally, how can we carry forward the lessons from this dark chapter of history, ensuring we never become indifferent to the suffering of others? I think it's not easy for us to compile an absolute or the most complete answers to those questions. But I'm sure that you can have your own response after immersing yourself in this movie. I believe that was such a long conversation. So before I close the first part of this episode, let me give you some hints to think ahead to the next part. Imagine you're an entrepreneur in the midst of a war, driven by profit and success. You see the opportunities to grow your wealth, but as the horrors around you unfold, you begin to question your own motives. What would you do? Would you continue to pursue the fortune? Or would you risk everything to make a difference? In the next part of this episode, we'll explore a story of someone who faced that very dilemma and made a choice that changed countless lives. So that's the end of my sharing today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it interesting. For your convenient reference to the historic events I mentioned, please find the links to my blog page in the description, where I have compiled all the related information. If you have any questions or you want to discuss more on what I shared today, please leave your comments below. I would love to talk to each of you more as well. You can search for more episodes of this Old School Movies podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and my own blog page. Thank you for listening to today's episode all the way to the end. And I hope to see you again in my next part of this episode of Old School Movies, which will be released soon. Once again, this is Nora, your host. Thank you so much and goodbye.